We have about 40, 45 minutes to do justice to a conversation on equitable development. I am Brother Shomari, host of Groundings, Evolutions, and Elevations with Brother Shomari. My show comes on every Friday, 1 to 4 p.m., and then again on Sundays from 6 to 8 p.m. But I'm going to jump right in with our panelists by way of brief introduction. Just let people know your name and how you are affiliated with the concept of equitable development, if there is such a thing. But let's start with quick introductions from my left all the way down and bring it here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maitrey Roy, and I'm the director at Bartram's Garden, which is in Southwest Philadelphia.
My name is Dwayne. My name is Dwayne Drummond. I am the president of the Mantua Civic Association.
Oh, so we're in your neighborhood, huh? Right.
My name's Charles Lomax. I am the CEO of Lomax Real Estate Partners and the developer of this project in Mantua.
Great.
All right, good afternoon. My name's Donald Moore. I am Senior Vice President at CHOP, overseeing real estate and development, and I'm also the board chair of Habitat for Humanity in Philadelphia.
Great. Nice to meet you.
Hello, my name is Tayibb Smith.
You look familiar.
I'm Chief Strategy Officer at the Growth Collective, and I'm also a principal at Smith & Roller.
All right, great. So we have 5 people here. We have about 45 minutes to do justice to a conversation. I don't know that we will, but I'm not going to ask a lot of questions. The first question, though, I do want everyone to weigh in. What is for you equitable development? And underneath that question is this idea, what are the factors that make a development project or movement equitable? Is it enough that there's Black or people of color participation in a development project, or are there other things that make a project equitable from your perspective? So let's start right here with Tayibb and work our way back down the line.
Good and deep question. I think for me personal, equitable development is something I've been on a journey to find a definition for. Since I first came into real estate, what drew me to real estate is that throughout my life I've dealt with housing instability. Intergenerationally, I think most of us to some extent have done with housing instability. As a great-grandchild of the Great Migration to parents who lived in public housing, I have struggled with people's concepts of like what is in the best interest of black communities. So what actually drew me to real estate was a curiosity about how to have a positive impact on black communities.
Great. And what are the, again, equitable, what makes something, sometimes things become a buzzword if they're not defined. I would hate for the idea of equitable development to become a buzzword. What makes a project equitable?
I think the equitable development, there are many layers to this thing. So whether you have a community focus, which could be how do you either stabilize or transform a community without displacement, that speaks to equity, giving people access to participate in that process, that becomes equitable. Having a focus on, let's say, if you are developing at a significant level, inviting people to the table, with a sight on including them, but also in an equitable way, meeting them where they are by way of their own business scale. Because you can often, what happens with some large institutions, they go over the heads of the people, with too much scale, instead of breaking it down into packages and pieces that they can actually participate in at a comfortable and successful level.
Great, thank you.
So for me, I think that it's intentional inclusion. I think that, the inequity, the economic inequity that we experience in our communities is definitely intentional. And if we're not intentional about how we address that, then we'll never address the issue. So it has to be very, very focused and intentional.
Well, you're looking at it right here. This process on this land that y'all sitting down on, it took a lot of community engagement. This guy right here to my right, he really got his behind whipped by the community. He had to go back to the drawing board a few times because this community motto is plan or be planned for. So basically, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So this is what you talking about, brother.
All right.
This process that we're going through right now.
Appreciate it.
My perspective is
I don't know who that is.
My perspective is that of public space and what it means to be inclusive in a public space. Many of our public spaces cater to certain demographics and populations, and I found at Bartram's that its colonial history and its museum type setting was really not something relatable to a community that was largely African American. So we opened up the conversation to say, what is it that makes this space a public space that's loved and cared for by its immediate community? And that's the journey, I think, of inclusion, of sharing transparently, ways of communication and sharing possibilities for activities that are relevant to that community to be part of that green space.
So not everyone has to answer this question, but if you want to, I would love to hear your thoughts. Is real, comprehensive, equitable development possible in places and cities, municipalities that still are racist at their core and in the way that the systems and structures operate? Do we look for incidents of equitable development, or does the idea, the paradigm of equitable development, is it possible in a place that still has racialized structures that promote inequity?
I'd love to. Does it work? Okay. I got to jump on this one because I want to follow up on what Charlie was saying, about the intentionality of it all. And I think it's critically important that we got to be believers, number one. So if you're not a believer, then either you're a follower or you're letting somebody walk over you, And so, as the brother was saying over there, somebody's coming in the community, they got to play. They got to understand. They got to reach out. They have to hear. They have to be asked what it is that's important, to them in their community. But we have to force people to be intentional about transformational investment and ensuring equity. So equity doesn't happen unless the voices of the people are heard. And so I'm a staunch believer. But unless you got people who are going to be hardcore, who are going to put themselves at risk to push the agenda, it ain't going to happen. Or it's not going to happen at the level that we need it to.
Great, thank you. Anybody else want to tackle that?
Yeah.
Just a thought, because you can't be. It's virtually impossible to be president of the United States, without the African American vote. It's impossible to be mayor of a major black or brown city without the African American vote. But somehow, with each generation, we're losing ground. So without an agenda or some cohesive definition, to your point about what equitable development is or what the impact is, I think too often we're falling for ribbon cuttings or frankly a pittance oftentimes for a few versus things that are transformative for our collective community. So I think courageous leadership and policy that is defined for the totality versus a few is really important.
Appreciate it.
So, from my perspective, yes, equity development is possible, but like I said, it has to be intentional. It's almost like it's aspirational. You have to sort of constantly. I mean, it is so hard. There's so much resistance. There's so many challenges, but you do it. You just do it anyway. I mean, that's if I've learned anything from my father, and that's it's sort of built into our DNA is that tell us we can't do something or it's impossible. Watch. I mean, but it takes a team too. It takes the city has been supportive of this project. The community has been supportive of this project, and the state has been supportive, and that support is really gained through dialogue and transparency. I mean, you have to sit down and do the work and talk to everybody. And I think
I would like to introduce the notion of working from abundance versus working from scarcity. If you think about the Southwest community, essentially there's generational neglect, racism,
Right.
There's toxins in the air, there's toxins in the water, there's toxins in the soil. it's surrounded that community for generations. So if you focus on that, how do you kind of get past all of those things? It so weighs you down. So what I like to think about is the most number of requests for block parties come from 19143. That community has music, they have parties, like amazing parties, they care a great deal about their kids. So let's create spaces that push those agendas forward. So I think really approaching things from a place of abundance, and it might sound naive and sort of Pollyannish, but that to me is a big strength.
Right. Let's talk Philly for a minute. On a scale of 1 to 10, I like scales. How does Philly rate as a city historically and up until this point? Now, let's not look aspirationally about potential, but up until this point, what's his track record as it relates to something called or like equitable development? And what works and doesn't work in this city that either enhances or gets in the way of equitable development in Philadelphia?
So you want to one?
Yeah, scale, and then
All right,
give us some
scale,
insight.
Scale. I'm going to say about a 3.
Frankly.
3, and I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing here across Philadelphia. I mean, you could check it out. You could take a look at it. You go up to the top of the Comcast Tower, and you look around the expanse of the city. You'll see tall buildings, active city, and then there's a precipitous drop in the physical nature of the city, and it goes flat, 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 and then it pops up again. To me, that's reflective of how it is that I'm going to say some leadership within the city just has not been on top of things when it comes to being a CEO of a city and marshaling the forces to transform in those gap areas.
All right, so I'm going to press you a little bit because we just had a power show of those type of people just on the stage before we got here.
Right.
What would you say to them that they need to do better to move us from a 3 to at least a 7?
I would say strategy. And so I think the key is identify where the successes actually happen. This today is a success. It probably took too long. There are a couple things in a way, right?
Yeah. And we're going to get into the micro dynamics of this in a minute. I'm going to really vibe with you two on that, but I want to stay at Philly.
You have to actively strategize where you see the dollars exist. So if you've got large institutions that are pumping out money to expand, figure out how you're going to help them understand that there is a vision that has to include the community. Figure out how you're going to push them to peel off pieces to make it an inclusive process. I mean, strategy.
All right.
I'm going to give them a 3 because I was 12 years old when this community had a supermarket. I was coming home from church with my grandmom and I saw the supermarket burned down. It's 2023. It burned down in 1992.
Wow.
I was 12. I'm 43.
Wow.
But this is, like the brother said right here, this is a stepping stone. This is a platform right now where we're at right now. And it's been a long time coming. And I know it has been some barriers and roadblocks. Through this whole process, I learned about credits and stuff that you had to get, permits. COVID was a mother. COVID was a mother. It shut down everything. It shut down development. Development went sky high.
It didn't shut down a lot of. It was particular in the development it shut down because macro level development happened all through COVID.
Yeah.
They were building roads and infrastructure everywhere.
Yeah, they was. But not over here.
That's right.
Not down in the bottom.
That's right.
Yep.
So you gave it a 3. What would he gave a strategy as a way forward. What would you say is the thing we need to focus on, particularly people who are stakeholders with power? What do they need to do better?
I think they have to realize that they have a voice.
Okay.
They have a voice, and they have to exercise their voting rights.
Okay.
Because once upon a time, like the only time people of color was able to vote if they knew how many jelly beans was in a darn jar.
Right, like a carnival show.
Yeah. So I think we had to exercise our rights, and a lot of even dealing with the zoning code. A lot of zoning codes is outdated.
Right.
It's outdated from 1950. It's 2023.
So that's good. That's good insight. I know Tayibb wants to jump in with some insight as well.
So
We got 2 threes. I need the number first, and then your idea for intervention.
So thank you all for setting the bell curve, but I'm going to go at a 1.
All right.
And there's yet to be any restitution to the African American community in particular in regards to land covenants, to redlining, to how banks exclude us from being able to, with the same credit and the same income, we're not getting accepted for mortgages. So strategy is one, but capital is really important. So as a city with, what we got, almost a $6 billion annual budget, if you're a bank and you're holding any city deposits and you're not doing business with black people, you're not investing in black people, you should not be receiving city deposits. Woo! If you're an anchor institution with a $20 billion endowment in proximity to Mantua, I shouldn't come over here in a car and see limitless like construction, but then when I get to the black community, the capital seems to hit a trickle.
Is that doable? Because I'm help me. I've seen probably. I don't think that you will get a bigger power display of black political power in a city.
I agree.
How do we have these
I
things?
agree with you, but even respects to my friends and colleagues and to my political leaders, since the change of Citizen United, capital is a vote. Right, so yes, I am very civically engaged. I always vote. I encourage all young people to vote, but I also understand that politics is a capital game as well now.
Right. Okay. All right. Anybody else want to weigh in on these? I want these numbers. We got a 1, a 3, a 3. I want to get some more numbers.
Are we away from the number? Or are you still on the number?
I still want the number. The
You asked the
number's
question if it's
important.
achievable. What's the number,
I'm
Charles?
gonna give a number, but I'm gonna give a number. I'm gonna lean towards.
You gotta get a number first.
Mike Trey's thought process as far as perspective of abundance. I'm sitting here on a project, 2.5 acres in Mantua, 6 blocks from 30th Street Station. It hasn't been easy. I would say I'd give it a 6.
A 6. Uh-oh.
You know, and it's because it's been incredibly, soul-crushingly difficult. But it's happening, and
Right.
we're we're doing something that.
Let me ask you a question, though. I'm going to press this a little bit.
Go ahead.
Is your number reflective of the fact that you entered into this from a place of abundance, though, that allowed you not to get your soul crushed, whereas anybody else might have
No,
it might not have gotten here?
No, this is not coming from a place of abundance. This has been brutal, and it's not because I'm from a place of abundance. This is just anybody. No, the reason this hasn't happened is because it's damn near impossible. And in spite of that,
Well, help me understand this.
because the support we've gotten from the state, the support we got from Senator Hughes, the support we've gotten from council people, the support we've gotten from the community, and it's not just capital. Capital is critically important, but it's also it's almost spiritual. It's
Right.
the support and well-being. Once you develop a rapport and relationship with the community, there's nothing we can't do.
Well, we call that social capital, which is another form of capital.
Without question.
Yeah.
But
And
Charles has got to call out his success, though. And I think that's one of the most important things. When there is success and it's happening, you got to call it out
And use it as a
you
model.
got to believe in it, use
Right.
it as a model,
Got you.
and use it as a model to take excuses away from people who say you can't do it.
Got you. Good
Yeah.
point.
You know what I'm saying? So let's call this what it is. I mean, he's going to have to build it up.
Yeah.
He's probably going to have to raise more capital. He's got to design it. He's got to take on developer risk, construction risk, etc. But he's got the most important thing is site control.
Right.
So let's get back to that land.
Exactly. Your number before we move on. I'm sorry, I don't know what I'm doing here with microphones. Your number before we move on.
I would hold on to my optimism and say we can only build up from a 4.
Okay. All right. So we know who's the most optimistic amongst our group. My number would have been a 1. I'm over here with my brother Tayibb, so I guess I sat in the right seat.
Well, I just want to say, I appreciate Charles's optimism. I tend to be a more pragmatic pessimist, and I think we need collaboration across the spectrum to actually move the numbers up. I did notice that he mentioned the state, he mentions the council person. I didn't hear any support from the administration. Okay, okay. I was just listening. But I think I understand how hard it's been for you to move this project along, and I don't think, particularly for WRD, for the Lomax family, for the good work that you've done, it should be that hard. So that's maybe why I'm a little more pessimistic. But you did get here.
But let's go into the microdynamic. I want to hear from you and this brother Vibe a little bit. Take us through. You use words like brutal and hell, and this brother ain't seen a supermarket in his neighborhood in almost 30 years. Like, we tell that story like that's normal sometimes. Like, it should not have been this brutal. So take us into some of the micro dynamics that took something that by all accounts made sense to do. Why in our city is it hard to do an equitable development project that benefits black people? Why is that hard?
I don't know. It's just hard. So what has to happen is you have to come up with a plan and with a model and with a project structure that's bankable. And when we started with 225 units of housing. We're going to put WURD here in a grocery store. And I came in, and the community was like, oh, hell no. He's like, that's too much housing. We're not doing that. You got it. We want more parking. We want home ownership. We want some affordability. And we don't want all that density. We don't want just a bunch of, we want it to be community centric. So we started having a conversation. And it took us, so my experience has been, it takes me 4 meetings before people really sit across the table and see each other as human beings. Okay. You have to get to the point where the people you're talking with and working with, they become your partners, and you're basically hearing each other, talking to each other, and coming up with collective and really solutions that are
Mutual.
done collectively.
So what's in your brain at that time? You're on the other side, quote unquote, other side of this at the time. What's going on from the community's perspective? When he walks up and he's proposing this brilliant thing, at least it's brilliant in his mind, the community is thinking what?
Welcome to the Lion's Den. And one thing I can say about Mr. Lomax, he didn't get eaten up by the lions. And it was about communication and community engagement. Because I remember one of the last meetings he came, he had a medical procedure. And he came in there and he took the whooping. And you see him, he's still here right now. So it must have worked. Sometimes we had to have them critical, hard conversations. We have to agree sometimes to disagree, and don't take it personal. Don't take it personal.
I'm gonna press you a little bit more. I want you to stay right there with that microphone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in an area, Mantua. I'm from Philly. Whether we want to call it the Bottom, Mantua, Powelton Villages, this area has a lot of history to it. What, from your perspective as a community person, made this project equitable in the midst of a lot of inequitable development that's going on around here? What do we need to know about knowing what's equitable and in our benefit versus the other stuff that might not be?
You'd be surprised who done came out of this community. I was a little boy that went to Morton McMichael's school right across the street from the projects. I'm the president of the Mantua Civic Association for 10 years. Helped created it. The ward leader of the 24th Ward. It's a lot of good stuff down in Mantua. You could get from Mantua to South Philly in like 5 minutes. Expressway right there. This is right here is a gold mine for African American people.
All right.
And that's what the bottom is. African American people. And it's changing.
All right.
But we got to respect the African American people, our culture, and our history.
And you felt that this project was intentional about doing that? Is that what made it different? All right, appreciate that.
Let me drop a phrase on you.
Drop it.
Value proposition. Okay, that's what's up. So if you're coming in here, I want to say that the Lomax family had a value proposition for this community. So when people show up and they want to talk with the associations, you got to say, okay, here's what we have to offer you that'll benefit the community, that won't displace the community, that'll help stand up the community. And I think that, and that's the strategic part about having somebody in City Hall and in the chairs of the council people to talk about what's of greatest value to certain communities and how can we strategically deploy resources to enable that value to be placed. But that's the threat. You know, if we don't have that in the mayor's office, if we don't have it in council seats, then we're going to flounder.
Charles, what did you, through this brutal journey, learn about equitable development? And I'm wondering, you know, and you can not answer this. I'm wondering, do you feel like you were challenged a little bit more, maybe because you were a brother coming into a black neighborhood doing a development project? Do you feel like it was kind of like you had to stand in the fire a little bit more than others, or did you feel like, I get it?
You know, it's interesting because when I first went down to Bartram's, I'm president of the board of Bartram's Garden. But when I first went down there, I was trying to do a development down there, and I met some of the people in the community. I thought I was in. I was like, I'm a black developer. I'm like, hey, I'm here. They looked at me like I had 4 heads. And they were like, yo, they're like, no. And so I had to prove myself. And it's the same thing. You had to sit down and talk to people and develop a relationship, and you had to put the time in. And so the thing is, what's so important about trying to do equitable development, and really it's subjective. It's subjective because it just depends on what people think. But I think it's really important to start to have a conversation so there's a level of transparency and trust that will give people an opportunity to have a voice. And, so you have to talk to people, you have to engage. And over the process of time, you're going to start to develop a relationship. It might work, it might not work, but that's the process you have to go through. It's much more difficult, it's much more time consuming, but to me, at the end of the day, the what you get when it's all said and done is a much, much better end product, end result.
Gotcha. So let's talk to our people who are present here in person and or maybe listening to this conversation. When we talk about or hear about development, gentrification, all of these things, we think it's something that they do to us often. What would you say to people here right now and listening to us about how we can become more empowered in what's happening in our neighborhoods, what we now call the development process? What do we have to do to make that process more equitable? I want to start with Tayibb and then work my way down.
Well, the brother said one of my favorite quotes, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I think we have to be like hyper engaged. I mean, that's from community meetings to RCO meetings, to even, as Charles said, actually meeting and investigating the people who are doing development in your community. But my dad always said that, he would say, I've been going to meetings for years, and people always come with no plan, and they say, stop. And if you don't have a plan, something is going to happen to you. So as a community, whether it's block to block, neighborhood to neighborhood, cities wide, we have to, articulate what is in our best interest to be included, or else people will always give you something that looks pretty but might not actually be to your benefit.
Okay, so instead of just a stop or resistance, we also have to have a proposition that we're bringing to what's going on in the spaces where we are.
I just want to double down on that because I think it's critically important how we articulate what it is we're interested in, because our voices in the development project, in the process, becomes the value that we offer to someone to benefit them to do something well.
I think that it's what's really important is that we need to recognize the inherent strength and value we have collectively as a group. people in Nancho own houses. They own stuff here. We need to understand what the value is. I go places and I see real estate that people walk away from. They don't understand the importance of it, no matter where it is. The one basic thing that's always in my head is that the populations continue to increase. Land is finite. And so just by that maxim, land's value is going to continue to appreciate and go up no matter what. And what I've seen over and over and over again, it's happening right now. So 20 or so years ago, 25 years ago, all the bridges from Parkside into University City were closed. The area atrophied. Right. That was deliberate. Yeah. The area atrophied, and to the point, and then all of a sudden they put them bridges back in, and all of a sudden everybody started scooping up property. Right. We have to understand how that stuff works. Right now, what's going on is development is going from University City. It's going to go all the way down to the river. It's going to go all the way west to Cobb's Creek. It's going to go north to the Parkside, to the park, and it's going to go east over the train sheds, over the train tracks. So people live there. People own real estate there. Understand what you have, and understand that there's the physical capital you have with the real estate, but you also have social capital with the community. And that cohesion, what they've done in Mantua, bringing everybody together, is critically important for us.
Great. Dwayne?
We as a black community, we need to educate ourselves. And I look around at all the vendors out here, and I see one vendor. Mark Harrell, wave your hand, Mark Harrell. Wave your hand. A lot of black people had property. We had property, but we can't do the paperwork, and we lose it. We lose our property. And that's a good brother right over there, that department over there. If we talking about generational wealth, man, plus you got community sweat equity, black community will be a force to reckon with if we have all our chips lined up together.
All right, good advice.
I'm going to say we have to organize. There's strength in numbers. Most of the black and brown communities in this city are on the front lines of climate change. And the impact of climate change in these communities are going to be really, really challenging.
How come we never combine these conversations?
We have to combine these conversations, and we have to organize, and there's strength in numbers. We have to really organize across agendas. We have to organize the folks that care about climate change. We have to organize the developers. We have to organize people who care about public health, and really work together, because that's where the strength in numbers is.
So I appreciate the insight. My last question, because our time is approaching. I want each of you, except for Charles, to just remind people who you are, what you do, how they can be in touch with you. Charles, I wanted you to close out with if I knew then what I know now. What would you offer to us? If I knew then what I know now, what one thing you would have done differently to have moved this along, probably either more smoothly, more efficiently, more whatever, you define that. But I want you to close us out with that. So each of you, except for Charles, just let people know who they've been listening to.
It's a privilege and honor to be here. My name is Maitreyi Roy. I hope you'll all come visit us at Bartram's Garden in Southwest Philadelphia.
Thank you.
My name is Dwayne.
Yes, y'all can clap. Let people know you are still here. We're out here at 3601 Haverford Avenue having a conversation about equitable development.
My name is Dwayne Drummond. I am the maintenance man.
Uh-oh. I am Donald Moore. I'm Senior Vice President of Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. I lead all of the master planning development, construction, and also chair of the board of Habitat for Humanity Philadelphia.
All right.
Tayibb Smith, Chief Strategy Officer at the Growth Collective and Principal at Smith & Roller.
All right, and Brother Charles, let people know who you are, and if you knew then what you know now.
So my name's Charles Lomax. I'm the CEO of Lomax Real Estate Partners. I'm Sarah's brother. That's my new thing. if I knew then what I know now,
We could end on that note.
no. I don't know if I would have done, this has been a learning experience. I mean, it's been a really, really valuable learning experience. I think that the thing is that the goal is to continue to build on the model, continue to try to improve it, and hopefully do enough stuff that's interesting to other folks that they want to replicate it. Because inclusive, community-focused development is so critical. So the thing that I think is really important to know is that Philly is in a unique place. We're not New York. We're not San Francisco. We're not D.C. We still have land. We still have, and it's a majority black city. We have an opportunity to become a model of affordable housing, developing affordable home ownership. We can come and there's brilliance in these communities. There really is. So we got to really exploit all the resources that we have collectively for this.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. Can we give our panel on equitable development a hand right here, 3601 Haverford Avenue in the city, in the Mantua section of the city of Philadelphia. We're here honoring the 20th anniversary of WURD Radio Black Talk Media. I'm going to ask all of our panelists to just kind of move to the front and take this beautiful picture as I hand it back to my good sister, Miss Tiffany Bacon.